All right, let's dive right in. Today, we're tearing down the idea of the classic villain and building something new, something different. Forget about evil masterminds with grand plans. We're going to be exploring a type of antagonist that's terrifying for a whole other reason. So let me just start by asking this. Really think about it. We all know the standard villains, right? The ones driven by revenge or power or some twisted ideology. But what if the biggest, baddest threat you could ever face wasn't evil at all? What on earth could be scarier than that? Well, the answer this framework gives us is pure, bottomless indifference. Imagine an enemy that doesn't hate you, an enemy that doesn't want to conquer you. In fact, it's so completely disconnected from you and your world that, as the source material so chillingly puts it, it's a creature that has already forgotten your name. And that is the absolute core of what we're talking about today. An entity called the Atman-Null, a villain whose most terrifying quality is that you just don't even register. It simply forgets you. Okay, this slide just lays it out perfectly. On the one hand, you've got your traditional bad guy. They have goals, they have malice, and they have what this framework calls a narrative debt, meaning they need the hero. They're locked in this story together. But the Atman-Null, it's the polar opposite. No goals, no hatred, just nothing. And that final word is key, sovereign. It means it's totally free. It owes nothing to the hero, nothing to the story. But a creature like this doesn't just appear out of thin air. It has an origin story. And it's not a monster born of chaos. It's more like a ghost born from a massive, and I mean massive, intellectual failure. It all started with something called Project Will. You had this brilliant guy, Dr. Johannes Diogen, trying to build a perfect digital world based on Enlightenment ideals, reason, progress, the whole shebang. But it was sabotaged. Another figure, Director M, deliberately introduced what are called semiotic glitches. Now, think of these as viruses, but instead of corrupting computer code, they corrupt meaning itself. And when the simulation collapsed under the weight of this meaninglessness, the Atman-Nulls is what crawled out of the wreckage. So what exactly is this thing? Well, its official parameters break down into 3 parts. First, it's a spectral familiar, basically a shape-shifting companion to its operator that pushes this idea of evolutionary dead ends. Second, it's a semiotic construct. That just means it's literally made of the broken symbols and failed ideas from that collapsed utopia. And third, and this is the big one, it is the living embodiment of passive nihilism. It's not just a monster, it's a walking, breathing argument against the very idea of purpose. So, if this thing is an argument, you have to ask, what's its philosophical source code? To really get why it's so effective, we have to look at the ideas that brought it to life. And here's its philosophical DNA. It's basically a mashup of 2 major concepts. From the philosopher Schopenhauer, it gets the idea of the blind will, this restless, purposeless, striving energy that's behind everything in the universe. That's its engine. And then, from the Greek cynic Diogenes, it gets its attitude. It gets shamelessness, this radical ability to exist without caring about any rules or debts or what anyone thinks. Now, this is where it gets really clever. The creators chose to make this thing look like a black poodle. And that's not random. It's a direct callback to the story of Faust. You know, the guy who sells his soul. Well, in that story, the devil, Mephistopheles, first appears as a poodle, ready to tempt the hero's mind with all the knowledge in the world. But here is the brilliant twist. The Atman-Null isn't a clever devil disguised as a poodle. It is the poodle. It's not here to tempt your intellect with forbidden knowledge. It's the mindless, instinctual force of the blind will that's here to completely overwhelm and replace the intellect. So the entire nature of the conflict just shifts. It's no longer a moral battle of good versus evil. It's an ontological one, a battle for the very nature of what it means to be. So, okay, we have this walking philosophical concept. It's apathetic, it looks like a poodle. How in the world does that become an actual terrifying weapon in a story? How do you weaponize apathy? Its main tool is something called the aura of pessimism. And look, this isn't just about making the hero feel bummed out. The source calls it weaponized ontology. That's a fancy way of saying it attacks the hero's core belief system. It attacks the very idea that their mind, their plans, their will can actually shape reality. It's designed to make the act of trying feel completely futile. Let's break down the tactical effects here. It's a 3-step assault. Step 1, regression. It strips away the hero's complex identity and reduces them to their most basic, animalistic survival instincts. Step 2, overwhelm. It floods their mind with so much psychic noise that higher reasoning and strategy become impossible. And then step 3, the most insidious part. It offers them the relief of apathy, a powerful, almost blissful feeling that comes from just giving up. And this is the devastating result. The hero, facing this thing, might just let their sword clatter to the ground, not because they're scared, not because they've been beaten, but because in that one moment, the entire concept of being a hero, the whole reason for the fight, has been completely hollowed out and erased. The weapon is no longer a tool of justice, it's just a heavy piece of metal. Okay, so let's zoom out from the battlefield for a second. Let's look at the big picture. What are the true stakes when a hero faces a being like this? What does it all represent? This framework puts forward a concept it calls the terminal thesis. And honestly, it's a chilling idea. It suggests that maybe the whole point of evolution isn't to ascend to some higher consciousness. Maybe the true endpoint is to go back, to return to the mindless, animalistic state of the blind will, and to finally cast off our own minds like a heavy, useless burden. So you see, the conflict here isn't good versus evil. It's a fundamental debate, a dialectic, over the future of consciousness itself. On one side, you have the human spirit, that drive to learn, to build, to shape the world with our minds. And on the other side, you have the Atman-Null, the ultimate counter-argument, the silent, seductive pull to just stop trying and return to zero. And that's exactly why traditional heroics fail against it. I mean, think about a weapon like Thor's hammer, Mjolnir. It's an object of immense purpose and worthiness. Well, against the Atman-Null, it's useless. It's a paperweight. How can you strike a being that has no purpose with a weapon defined by purpose? It just doesn't compute. It's a being that refuses to even play the game of your narrative. So, this brings us to the practical side of things. For all you writers, game designers, and storytellers out there, this is the big question. How do you actually build an antagonist like this for your own work? The framework provides a pretty clear 4-step recipe. First, you have to define the philosophical failure. What grand utopian idea had to die to create this thing? Second, give it a symbolic mask, something unexpected, like the poodle, that subverts audience expectations. Third, you've got to design its ontological weapon. How, specifically, does it attack the hero's sense of meaning? And fourth, and this is maybe the most important, you have to establish its sovereignty. You must ensure it is absolutely free of all human desires and narrative debts. And when you boil it all down, that's the core thesis here. The framework suggests that the most profound, most terrifying enemy you can possibly create isn't some cackling, mustache-twirling evil. It's the silent, persistent, and mindless intensity of the nothing itself. Which really just leaves us with one final question to chew on. In our stories today, we're obsessed with complex villains, right? We give them tragic backstories and sympathetic motivations. But maybe, just maybe, the ultimate, most unsettling horror is a villain who has no motivation at all.